with the school team, and also sort of just giving a general overview of the special education process and sort of how to start that and how to navigate that process as a parent or caregiver. Go ahead to the next slide. So when we're thinking about kind of early on in childhood, particularly even in sort of the early intervention years, what are some of the sort of signs that we think about when we think a child may need specially designed instruction or special education? And so we might see that there's some trouble adapting to classroom routines, maybe difficulty with communicating wants and needs in that setting, limited or sort of challenging peer interactions, maybe children who don't seem to have quite the same play skills as other peers their age, transition challenges, maybe seeming to have some sensory needs. And Monica, our parent partner, is going to help present some of this information. So Monica, I didn't know if there were some things maybe that you remember noticing with your boys kind of early on that led to thinking about, the possibility of special education.
Yeah, absolutely. And wanted to bring up like a point too on that is that my older son was enrolled in a regular preschool, and there were like behaviors, he was kind of like really hard to transitions were his big thing. He was really hard to transition him from one activity to another. And we found that the school was very afraid to bring that up to us. So it was like almost at the end of the year before we had like a conversation about it. So I think one thing is like, if you have concerns and to bring them up possibly, because I think I was like, oh, maybe these are just things that are going home and at school, he's fine. He's got this all figured out. So definitely, if you have concerns like, hey, I noticed he's has a hard time transitioning from snack to playing outside. Do you see that here? Just kind of giving them some examples, I think is really important. And fixation on objects rather than functional play, that was big. We were very much lining up trains in our family, watching wheels spin, etc. My younger son has pretty low support needs. He's pretty independent, and his big thing was the reaction, right? We had what on the surface to me might look like a small problem. We say we had a banana and I peeled it wrong, and the reaction was so big compared to the circumstance. So that was another big sign that we saw as well.
Great, thank you. We go to the next slide. So when we start to think about the special education system and the process, it can be really overwhelming. There's, lots of different sort of parts of the process, lots of different terms and acronyms that we're going to hear. So today we're going to try to kind of give like a high level overview of some of the basics that you're going to want to be thinking about. And the big one is this word highlighted in red, the IDEA, which is going to be the federal law that really guides the special education process. So we can go to the next slide. You can click one more time. We can just load this whole slide. I think there we go. Okay. So IDEA, again, this is a federal law. So I know we often have participants that join us from other states outside of Pennsylvania, which is great. So a lot of this information is going to be applicable wherever you live. There are some state-specific kind of nuances, but in general, IDEA is going to be providing special education services for children with any qualifying disability. And this term FAPE is a really important one. This is free, appropriate public education. And this is sort of the basis of special education law, and saying that every child is entitled to be able to go to school and to be successful and to be able to learn. And so, special education exists to help provide whatever services and supports might be needed to make sure that happens. And there are two parts. So there's this birth to 3, which is part C of IDEA. So that's going to be our really early intervention system. And then 3 all the way through at least 21 is going to be our special education system. And we're going to kind of talk about a little bit of both of those today. You can go to the next slide. So early intervention, typically this is the term used from that birth until the 3rd birthday. This is the services and supports available for younger children who might be showing some different delays in different areas. And this tends to be very sort of family focused, generally happens in the home, focusing sort of on the natural environment. But children, really, really little children, may still qualify even early on for different therapies like speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and other supports when we find that there is a delay in any number of areas. You can go ahead to the next slide. So again, this takes place usually in the natural environment, and a child who's getting services through early intervention is going to have an individualized family service plan. So again, there's sort of this focus on the family in these early years and helping to really provide support so that child can be successful in their home. And I put the information on this slide is for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. But again, every state is going to have an early intervention system and should have sort of a central intake point if a family's concerned. And I want to also make the point that there doesn't have to be any diagnosis at all confirmed medically. So if parent has any concerns about their child's development in these early years, they can contact their state's early intervention system and start the process for an evaluation. Some states do have some sliding scale fee for services once a child qualifies, but that's going to be sort of state specific. The evaluation is free and is a way to sort of get an assessment of whether your child might need some support. Go ahead to the next slide. Once a child is approaching their third birthday, they're going to then transition into what we think of as sort of the public special education system. That term FAPE is still going to be really important here. The other thing that's really important to think about is that the law sort of requires that children are educated in the least restrictive environment. And so that means, to the best of our ability, we're going to have kids with their same age, developmentally typical children, getting the support they need to participate as much as possible. So like in our case example today, really bright student, we want to see him in regular ed classes as much as possible. And so now the question comes up of what support does he need to be able to continue to be successful there. So under IDEA, again, all public schools have to provide the appropriate supports and services for any child with a qualifying disability in order for them to be making educational progress. To determine what that's going to look like, really important thing here is that there is a process we go through, which is going to include an evaluation by the education team. You can go ahead to the next slide. So this is sort of our general process. We're going to identify that there's a need. We're going to go through that process to determine if a child's eligible. If they are, we're going to be developing an IEP, which is the Individualized Education Program. And then we're going to be monitoring what that looks like and what progress looks like. And this is where, like in today's case, we talked about data collection. So everything within the IEP should be very data driven, and we're looking at progress and how the current program is working or not working. And then there's going to be some reevaluation that happens on a periodic basis to make sure that needs haven't changed, to make sure that things we're offering for support are still the right things to be offering. So in that very beginning part where we're sort of identifying there might be a need, this is, any number of people can sort of make the initial request. So sometimes it's the school team that might notice that a student who's there seems to be struggling in certain areas, and they might be the ones that actually propose the evaluation. But often it's parents. Parents can make a request for a multidisciplinary educational evaluation anytime they have concerns. And that can be made verbally or written. I would say that we typically suggest that families have some written documentation. Email's often a great way to sort of keep, a timeline of when they've made a request, how long it's taking to get responses, because there are some timelines around those things. Sometimes it might be that another agency supporting that student might notice some needs, and they might make the suggestion for the evaluation as well. Go ahead to the next. So once that referral is made, again, if it's early intervention under 3, then that's going to be sort of a slightly different process. But once a child's 3, this is going to go through either their public school or in Pennsylvania, we have something called intermediate units for ages 3 up until someone starts kindergarten. So there's going to be a different entity, the local education agency, sort of the term we use for that, whether it's the school district or the intermediate unit. And they are going to be the ones that provide the school-based evaluation. Go ahead to the next slide. And again, so that evaluation is going to be what we use to determine eligibility to then inform developing a plan or program. And this may include all different kinds of assessments looking at sort of academic ability, cognitive testing, behavioral, social emotional. We're going to look at speech and OT needs. So we really should be doing a comprehensive evaluation when we're doing this multidisciplinary evaluation. The other thing important to note is that this is different than a medical evaluation, and so it is really important that families have that understanding that even if we've gotten a medical diagnosis at this point, maybe when we're entering school, there still has to be a school-based evaluation to determine whether special education services are needed. You can go ahead now. So once we've gone through that and we've determined that someone is eligible, we're going to develop the IEP. You can click this slide one more time. So this is going to set out goals. This is going to set out what services are going to be provided to help work toward those goals, what accommodations are needed, and then sort of where we want to see sort of outcomes with the goals. So those goals should be really measurable and concrete and actually have sort of data points that we're looking to achieve by the support that we have put in place. And click this one more time. So the special ed or the IEP team, this is always going to include the parent and caregiver as an equal and really important team member. At least one regular education teacher, one special education teacher. When children hit age 14, so like our case today, we want to start to think about how much and in what way they want to be participating in their IEP process. There's going to be a school representative. And then, if we've just gotten this reevaluate or this new evaluation done, usually the person who's done that, which might be the school psychologist, they're going to probably be part of the initial meetings as well, helping to interpret all of the information. And anyone else who's working with the child can always be invited. So, that's important for parents and caregivers to know as well, that if they have a really great therapist that knows their kid really well, and that person's able to join the IEP team meeting, they're more than welcome to be part of that process. So then once we develop this IEP, this is going to be within 30 days of having the evaluation, and it is a written legal document. So typically the school team is going to prepare a draft ahead of time and send that to the family before the meeting. And then we're going to go through all the different sort of components of the IEP document at the meeting. Parents, again, are a really important team member. And so this is the place where they are going to share some feedback as well, or possibly, discuss whether the supports that the team's proposing are going to be the right ones or whether we need to make some adjustments to that plan. So again, this is a legal document, which is really important. So knowing your rights as a parent for what special education services are, this, again, if there's ever a concern, the IEP is sort of a fluid document. So we can make changes at any time. You don't have to wait till a certain time point. If it feels like things aren't working, like in this case, our case example, parents are going to want to share those concerns and figure out what we can do a little bit differently to make improvements in this area. Now I'm going to hand things over to Monica to sort of talk about ways that parents can do those things.
Okay. Thanks, Suzanne. That was great. Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway I've kind of learned in my year, so my oldest is he's in 6th grade, and we live in New Jersey, so he has been part of this school district since he was 3. So I believe this is maybe our 9th year, is really partnering with the school. I think it's easy to go in with like an us versus them mentality. But really I found that if I kind of go in and I'm willing to work with them, we have a much better relationship. So I wish I could go back and tell younger Monica that, and but kind of now, we're in a better place, and I think a lot of it is just like you learn as you go along. But one thing I like to do each year is go in with just a 101. So the picture on the right shows like an all about me. So how can I, especially if my child is going into a new school, whether that be a transition from grade school to middle school, preschool to kindergarten, or just brand new to the school, how can I arm the school with the information about my child to help support him or her, right? What are their strengths? What do I love to do? What motivates me? What are some things that are hard for me? Which strategies work, etc. Um, I think it's really important to kind of give a whole picture there. Often in these IEP meetings, the discussions revolve around deficits. So anything to kind of highlight these strengths goes a really long way. And then the more the school team knows about your child and all the great things they do, that also is helpful for teachers, therapists, etc. I have a son who loves Thomas and Friends, right? So anytime, especially early on, if we had any sort of visual schedule, trains were incorporated in those. So just how can we get those strengths and what I like to do, and use them to kind of help develop a plan to help me with the challenges that my child might have. And then the other thing really I think is important is to get involved in your school district's, what we call in New Jersey is CPAG, Special Education Parent Advisory Group. So from my understanding, each school district is expected to have one. I think they're only as good as the parent involvement because they are parent run. But it's a really great way to connect with other parents who are navigating special education in your school district. I love learning from parents that have been through it, that have children older than mine. And I think it's also so rewarding to, like, now that we're in the middle of it, be able to reach out and kind of help those preschool children, right? To say like, hey, this is something my child really struggled with. Maybe you can ask for this in your IEP meeting, etc. The other big thing, and it really speaks to the example, I loved Amanda's example that she provided today with a case, is getting involved in the classroom and seeing firsthand like what's working and what's not. I'll never forget early on, we had, I believe it was my son's last year preschool, we were working on getting him more fully included with some typical peers. And the aide was really like critical to do that, right? He had some struggles with transitions, and we really needed someone that could kind of anticipate his next move and allow him to show his how he could excel academically with the right support. Went in the first day and just was like, oh, this is just not going to work. Very nice person, but just not a great fit for my child. And I knew going into that discussion, though, that wasn't going to be enough. And for my feeling wasn't going to be enough to make a change to that support. So what I did is I went in and I said, all right, there's a book fair coming up. I'm going to volunteer for the book fair. I'm going to go to this pumpkin patch. There's a mystery reader. I'm going to try to get in there. And then I kind of made some observations as well. And also, not trying to get anyone in trouble either, but also when you're in there, you can give kind of tips like, hey, this really works for my child, etc. Went home, wrote up an email and just said, hey, I think this person is lovely. I've noticed that he's eloped from the classroom when I was there. I think he needs someone. In our case, we needed what's called a registered behavior technician. So someone that is trained in that behavior support, because the behaviors were preventing him from succeeding academically in that classroom. And I think having those kind of that evidence of what wasn't working and then providing kind of a plan of, I guess, not a plan, but a list of what we wanted to see, I think kind of helped them find a replacement. And it wasn't like, oh, I sent an email and it worked and everything was beautiful. We had to go back and forth. We had a couple IEP meetings, et cetera. And I think just collectively coming to the table and be willing to work out solutions. We had our behavior person at home that we worked with at home come into the classroom, make some suggestions, et cetera. But again, just willingness to work together as a team to come up with different solutions. At the end of the day, a school is run similar to a business, right? So there's only so much money, and as much as it would be great if everyone could have, like, if they came in and said, hey, this is this book of supports, you pick and you tell me what you need. It's often not done that way. So it really is important to be collaborative and say to what's working and what's not working, to come up and be willing to work with them to come up with solutions. The other thing is just go with your gut. If something doesn't seem right, don't be afraid to speak up about it. any discussions that you're going to have, you want to, especially in person, you want to follow up with an email. Hey, per our discussion, so-and-so would really benefit from a visual schedule. Can we start implementing that next week? Something as simple as that. Just to kind of get those requests in writing, so you have, I find that we're all human, and sometimes I know I'm guilty of it myself at my job too, is sometimes someone tells me something and I have the best intentions to follow up with that, but I forget, right? So time you can put something in writing just goes to help reiterate that request. And the other thing too is if you're not getting anywhere with the child study team or teacher, you can always elevate that beyond there, right? So there's a special education director to talk to, superintendent. No one wants to have to go down the legal path, but mediators and also lawyers can support you as well if it's really not working. But I think to Susanna's point, that least restrictive environment piece is so important. And I think often something that parents hear that language, but not necessarily understand like what that means, right? So it's really, when my son started school, he had pretty high autism support needs. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to try the inclusion class first. He went into the what we call reach room, multiple disability room, and that is not necessarily the best fit for every child, right? So it's, again, really trying to work with the school and know your rights as a parent going into this is really important as well. And Suzanne said, kindness goes a long way. I couldn't agree more. It is so important to partner with them. My children's aides are like family to us. We arm them with like information. We are always asking how they're doing. I know their kids, I know, and ask about their children, etc. It really has to be collaborative. When you become an us versus them, it's not going to work. But at the end of the day, I do think the schools in general want your children to succeed. Sometimes there are barriers beyond their control. But if you're willing to work with them, I think your child can be really successful in the school district.
Great. Thank you, Monica. Those are all great suggestions. And we have a couple minutes if anyone has any questions about the presentation today. Yeah, I like great comment. Relationship building is very important. So, I mean, I think that was, Monica shared some great examples of how that has really worked. And I love that idea too of like going in a collaborative approach. Because the school district is with your child for many years and, trying to find a way that everybody's working together and having a positive experience is really important.
I guess, Susanna, one more comment to one of your points about bringing the child into the meeting. So we have, in the last couple of years, my oldest is 12. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we bring him in just for the beginning to kind of get a little bit of familiarity with that process. Like, hi, I'm Tommy. This is my